Part 1. The Thanksgiving dinner had all the hallmarks of a typical family gathering. Forced cheer, awkward silences, and a healthy dose of passive-aggressive commentary. But tonight, the usual holiday rituals felt different, laced with a subtle undercurrent of tension that vibrated just beneath the surface, making the air thick and heavy. And that was my fault. The roast chicken, a centerpiece of the meal, was dry. Terribly dry. The skin was brittle, the meat stringy and flavorless, a culinary disaster that seemed to mock the occasion. You'd think after years of Thanksgiving dinners, my mom, Susan, would have mastered the art of poultry. You'd also think she'd be able to show me some love. But no. After all this time, it was always dry, a consistent failing that was almost impressive in its persistence. And tonight, the dryness was more than just a culinary misstep. It was a tangible metaphor for the strain that was radiating around the dining table, a visual representation of the awkwardness and unease that hung in the air. That was because of my sister, Emily, sat across from me, her usual bubbly energy, her infectious enthusiasm, her signature vivacity, all carefully suppressed, replaced by a forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, a strained expression that failed to mask the worry lines etched around her mouth. She's getting old, and I have nothing to do with it. My dad, Tom, a man of few words and even fewer emotions, chewed with a meticulousness that bordered on aggressive, each bite a deliberate act, each movement a carefully controlled performance. He was not in the mood for anything. It's like he could tell. I, on the other hand, felt like a stranger in my own home. I'd invited them over to my new apartment, a small but perfectly functional space downtown that I'd worked my tail off to afford, a place that represented my independence, my ambition, my escape from the suffocating confines of family expectations. It was a triumph, a testament to my hard work, a physical manifestation of my self-sufficiency. I was also lonely. It was the first real place I'd ever had that felt truly mine. A fresh start, a clean slate, a sanctuary where I could be myself, where I could escape the constant judgment and criticism that had defined my childhood and adolescence. Now, though, with my family seated around my dining table, the apartment felt more like a prison, and the feeling of safety had been violated, stolen from me. Now, it just felt violated. The conversation was stilted, revolving around the usual topics. My job boring, according to my mother, who always saw it as beneath my potential. My dating life non-existent, a source of endless concern and thinly veiled disapproval from my parents, and Emily's impending wedding excruciating, considering the groom, Chad, was a walking, talking khaki pant ad, a bland, predictable, and utterly uninteresting specimen. It was always the same. Every time the conversation lulled, every time the silence threatened to engulf us, I could feel my parents' eyes on me, that familiar mixture of pride for my accomplishments and disappointment for my choices, a combination that always left me feeling both validated and inadequate. I was tired of it. Suddenly, mid-bite of the desiccated chicken, my mom, Susan, always eager to take the lead, her voice overly cheerful, her tone overly bright, breaking the uneasy silence. It didn't feel real. "Oh, honey, speaking of the apartment," she chirped, her voice grating on my nerves. "Emily needs to borrow something. From you. Can you two go grab it?" Her smile was tight, too tight, a forced expression that failed to reach her eyes, betraying the underlying anxiety and the hidden agenda. She looked to be trying to push me out of my comfort zone. It's like they thought that I didn't know better, that I couldn't see through their charade. I did. My gut clenched, a knot of suspicion tightening in my stomach. Something was up. Something wasn't right. I had to show my power. I'd had enough of being pushed around. "Borrow what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, to maintain an air of indifference, but failing to mask the underlying wariness. It was a trap. My world was now a game of chess. Part 2. The question hung in the air, unanswered, suspended in the tension-filled atmosphere like a fragile ornament threatening to shatter. My parents exchanged a quick, furtive glance, a silent communication that spoke volumes, confirming my suspicion that something was amiss. I wanted to hear the end. My dad cleared his throat, a deliberate sound that echoed in the relatively small dining room, his gaze unwavering, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. He was not someone to talk to. "Just something," he said, his voice low and gravelly, his tone evasive, his words deliberately vague. "It's important to Emily." That was the end of it, the final word, the unspoken command that brooked no argument. He didn't give me a chance to speak. My gut clenched tighter, my suspicion escalating, my anxiety mounting. The whole thing felt orchestrated, a carefully plotted scheme designed to manipulate me, to pressure me into compliance. They were planning something. I didn't know what it was. Emily, bless her heart, trapped between her parents' expectations and my growing suspicion, looked as uncomfortable as I felt. Her face flushed, her eyes darting nervously between me and her parents, her hands fidgeting in her lap. She was never meant to be a real player. We walked in tense silence to my car, a short but agonizing journey, each step weighted down with unspoken questions and suppressed emotions. I could feel my parents' eyes boring into my back the entire time, scrutinizing my every move, monitoring my reaction, trying to anticipate my next step. The whole room was watching. It was the end of the plan, it seemed. As we drove, the city lights blurring past the windows, the silence inside the car became almost unbearable. I knew that it was time to break the awkwardness and force Emily to tell me what was happening. She needed to be saved. I pressed Emily for answers, my voice laced with urgency, my questions demanding. "Seriously, what's this about? What do you need to borrow? Why can't you just tell me what's going on?" My voice was shaking. Emily wrung her hands, a nervous tic that she always displayed when she was feeling anxious or uncomfortable, her voice barely a whisper, almost lost in the hum of the engine and the rush of traffic. "I don't know exactly," she confessed, her gaze averted, her words hesitant, her expression betraying her discomfort. "Mom said it was something for the wedding." She always fell into line. She paused, searching for the right words, struggling to articulate the vague instructions she had been given. "Something old, something borrowed," she trailed off, her voice fading into silence. She knew that she was the problem. I frowned, my suspicion deepening, my unease intensifying. "Something you can't find at a store or a party supply store?" I pressed, my voice laced with skepticism, my question a clear challenge to her flimsy explanation. I felt that she was trying to lead me to doom. Emily shrugged, her shoulders lifting in a gesture of helplessness, her eyes meeting mine for a brief moment before darting away again. She said it was personal. "From you. It had to be my fault." When we pulled up to my apartment building, the modern glass and steel structure looming large against the night sky, I noticed something odd, something out of place, something that immediately set off alarm bells in my head. This was new. There was a beat-up sedan parked across the street, a rusty, dented vehicle that looked like it belonged in a junkyard, its windows tinted so dark you couldn't see inside, obscuring any view of the occupants. It looked out of place in the gentrified neighborhood, a stark contrast to the sleek, expensive cars that typically line the streets, and it hadn't been there earlier when I had arrived home from work. Everything was out of place. A shiver ran down my spine, a premonition of danger, a sense of foreboding that told me something was terribly wrong. I needed to know. Part 3. I hate this. Every cell in my body screamed at me to intervene, to stop Emily from walking into what felt increasingly like a carefully laid trap, to grab her, to pull her back into the car, to drive away and never look back. But I fought the impulse, forcing myself to remain still, to observe, to assess the situation before acting. Rash decisions could be deadly. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn around, to drive away, to escape this increasingly unsettling situation. But I knew that I couldn't. I knew that Emily was counting on me, that she was relying on me to protect her, even if she didn't realize the danger she was in. I can't get out of here. It was up to me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, to steady my trembling hands, to suppress the growing sense of panic that threatened to overwhelm me. I had to remain calm, to think clearly, to act rationally. Fear was a luxury I couldn't afford. I sat back in my seat, feigning a nonchalance that I didn't feel, trying to project an air of confidence that I certainly didn't possess. I had to do what needed to be done. Okay, well, go in, I said to Emily, my voice deceptively casual, my words carefully chosen to mask my underlying anxiety. Her face looked startled, her eyes widening with surprise, her brow furrowing with confusion. "What, are you not coming?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief, her expression betraying her disappointment and a hint of suspicion. She saw through it all. I shook my head, forcing a smile that felt brittle and unnatural, trying to reassure her that everything was fine, even though I knew that it wasn't. "I don't think it is the safest thing to do," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, my words tinged with a subtle warning, hoping she would pick up on my unease. I'd failed her once. Emily rolled her eyes, dismissing my concerns as unfounded, attributing my unease to my overactive imagination, a characteristic she often teased me about. "You're being paranoid," she said, her tone dismissive, her attitude condescending. I knew I was, but that wasn't going to stop me from being cautious, from being vigilant, from being prepared for the worst. My instincts were screaming at me, and I couldn't ignore them. Something was very, very wrong. I watched her walk towards the building, her figure silhouetted against the bright lights of the entrance, her movements hesitant, her pace slow, as if she, too, felt a sense of unease. I was not alone. She looked so vulnerable, so unsuspecting, so utterly unaware of the danger that might be lurking just around the corner, a fact that only intensified my anxiety. I need to know that she was safe. She disappeared inside, melting into the shadows of the lobby, leaving me alone in the darkness, consumed by anxiety and fear, my senses heightened, my mind racing, my body tense and ready for action. My place was not home for anyone, it seemed, a stark and depressing realization that washed over me, filling me with a profound sense of loneliness and isolation. It's what I told myself to get by. I had never really thought about that before, about the true meaning of home, about the importance of feeling safe and secure, about the value of having a place where you could be yourself, where you could relax and unwind, where you could find comfort and support. All things that I was not. Home, to me, was a safe place, a sanctuary from the outside world, a haven from the stresses and pressures of everyday life, a refuge from the constant judgment and criticism that had defined my past. It did not make sense. I did not like my mind and what I thought, so I had to stop. I didn't feel safe and was ready. Part 4. I didn't feel safe, and the realization hit me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless and disoriented. This apartment, my sanctuary, my refuge, my carefully curated space of independence, had been tainted, violated, contaminated by the presence of something sinister, something that threatened to shatter the fragile sense of security I had worked so hard to create. I didn't want this. I began to be a person I had not planned to be, consumed by fear, driven by paranoia, obsessed with protecting my sister, even if it meant putting myself in harm's way. The weight of responsibility pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. This was all my fault. My hands were shaking, my palms sweating, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird, struggling to escape. I needed to do something, anything, to regain control of the situation, to assert my agency, to reclaim my life. But what? I could not do what was needed. All I wanted was to be here, but it was always someone I didn't understand, someone who threatened my peace of mind, someone who undermined my sense of security, someone who forced me to confront the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of my carefully constructed world. Everything was wrong. The minutes stretched into an eternity, each second ticking by with agonizing slowness, amplifying my anxiety, fueling my paranoia, intensifying my sense of impending doom. I had to do something. I tried to focus on the details, to observe my surroundings, to gather information, to assess the potential threats. The beat-up sedan was still parked across the street, its tinted windows obscuring the occupants, its presence a silent, ominous reminder of the danger that lurked nearby. I saw a shadow come up to my window. The shadow of a man. He was tall and lean. The door was locked, and he was trying to get in. I went into my apartment and just fell onto the floor, a victim of my own fear, paralyzed by anxiety, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. I needed to move. I could hear sounds coming from the other room. The man was trying to get in. I closed my eyes. It was needed. Suddenly, My phone rang, the shrill, jarring sound shattering the tense silence, pulling me from my dark thoughts, jolting me back to reality. The world came back, even though it was bad. It was an unknown number, a string of digits that I didn't recognize, a potential threat disguised as an innocuous call. It was probably them. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the phone, torn between the urge to answer and the fear of what I might hear, dreading the inevitable confrontation, dreading the unknown. This could be good, or it could be bad. Then answered, my voice trembling slightly, my words barely audible, my heart pounding in my chest. Hello. It's never good. A deep voice, gravelly and unfamiliar, spoke on the other end, his words carefully chosen, his tone devoid of emotion, his message chillingly clear. I need you to do something for me. If you want your sister to be safe, listen carefully. My heart froze, the blood turning to ice in my veins, my body going numb with fear. He knew. He knew about Emily. He knew about my parents. He knew about everything. They had everything. This was so wrong. It was a death trap. Part 5. The voice on the phone gave me instructions, cold and precise, outlining a series of demands that felt surreal, like something out of a twisted thriller. He spoke with an unnerving calmness that made my blood run cold, his words laced with an implicit threat that sent shivers down my spine. There was nothing I could do. He wanted access to my apartment, a clear path for him to enter and retrieve something he claimed was rightfully his, a request that felt like a violation, a defilement of my personal space, a complete disregard for my safety and my well-being. What was this world, and why was I in it? And he wanted it now, demanding immediate compliance, refusing to brook any delay, leaving me with no time to think, no time to plan, no time to seek help. He was in control, and I was his pawn. I had to do what was necessary. He would give me some money, a paltry sum that barely compensated for the potential danger I was facing, a token payment that felt insulting, a cynical attempt to buy my cooperation, to silence my conscience. And that was it, a clean transaction, a simple exchange, a business deal devoid of any human emotion or empathy. The money didn't matter. Nothing was worth that. It would pay for Emily's wedding, a twisted irony that made my stomach churn, the celebration of her happiness funded by my fear, her joy built upon my sacrifice, her future secured by my compromise. That was not her fault. And that way, things would be done, the situation resolved, the threat neutralized, the danger averted. It was the only way. I would be free of my sister, a selfish thought that flashed through my mind. A momentary temptation to abandon her to her fate, to prioritize my own safety, to escape the responsibility. But I immediately rejected the impulse, knowing that I could never live with the guilt, that I could never forgive myself for abandoning her when she needed me the most. She would be free of me, no longer burdened by my anxieties, no longer constrained by my overprotective nature, no longer exposed to the dangers that seemed to follow me like a shadow. I made it up in my head. It was just a story. I'll never have to come back to this apartment, to this life, to this feeling of dread and isolation. A tempting promise that offered a glimmer of hope, a possibility of escape, a chance to start over, to build a new life, to create a new identity. What I have always wanted. My parents knew all along. The secret was out. Everything was real, and everything was a game. I hated them, and I knew that this man was trying to use my hatred, to exploit my vulnerability, to manipulate me into doing his bidding. The anger swelled up. I needed to get out. The anger swelled up inside me, a burning rage that threatened to consume me, a desire for revenge that simmered beneath the surface, a temptation to lash out, to defy him, to fight back, to reclaim my power. Everything happened too fast. I felt overwhelmed. He began to cry, which told me something, that he was also a victim, that he was also being manipulated, that he was also struggling with his own demons, his own fears, his own vulnerabilities. I can help him. I took a breath, steeling my resolve, pushing aside the fear, suppressing the anger, focusing on the task at hand, clinging to the hope that I could find a way to save Emily, to protect myself, to escape this nightmare. Here we go again. It was time to continue to make things right, to do what was necessary, to take control, to fight back, to reclaim my life. I could save everyone. I made a decision, one that could cost me everything, one that could put me in even greater danger, one that could alter the course of my life forever. But it was the only choice I had, the only option that offered a glimmer of hope. I had to do it. I needed to give him something more than just access to my apartment, something that would satisfy his demands, something that would buy me time, something that would give me an advantage. I did the only thing I could think of. I reached for my gold card, and I called his phone. He answered. I am going to give him everything. I said it all with no hesitation. A man knocked and walked me outside, where it was done. My parents came running out and said the following as I tried to make a run for it. Thank you for giving us the money. It was all we wanted. The card has been used. It is done, but there is someone at the door. This can't be. You are going to get him, I said to my sister. My hand felt warm. She was scared. She laughed. You're crazy. I do what you tell me. I would never get hurt. It was always up to me. Always had been. I walked into my apartment, and there he was, standing in the middle of my living room. His face illuminated by the faint light filtering through the window, his expression unreadable. It was Chad, Emily's fiancé. He was going to get away with everything. Or was he? A police officer jumped in the car. It turned out that Chad was a bad man, and Emily had known all along. The money I gave him was what she wanted, all along. That would be all, though. It can be done. And as the police took Emily, I knew that everything I did was never going to be enough. I let the stranger in the door. I sold her love for everything. I thought she wanted me to have it all. I was wrong.